Week 11 of the 2023 college football season is wrapped up, and so today I'll be giving you guys our Week 12 college football rankings. We are headed into the home stretch of this 2023 regular season, so with that, we'll be talking about where things stand here today as we look forward to the final 2 weeks of regular season action. So with that, let's get started with 1 through 7. Georgia is our new number 1 this week. We had Michigan number 1 for the past few weeks. But the way that Georgia played against Ole Miss, beat them 52-17, Georgia is deserving of being number 1. They're 10-0 on the season. And I mean, this is a team that we have questioned a bit this season, mainly because they haven't been quite as dominant as, say, the past couple of seasons. But when this team is needed to show up against their best opponents, they have done so. And that's really what I think matters at this point in the season. And so for Georgia, got it back to number 1, and they should be number 1 until proven differently. And honestly, they should be number 1 in the college football playoff rankings this week. If not, I would be stunned. Michigan number 2, Ohio State number 3. Michigan beat Penn State 24-15. What a win for the Wolverines there. I mean, just an insane week they have had with the Jim Harbaugh situation. A lot going on there in Michigan right now, but for them to focus on beating Penn State and get it done was a massive win for them. And they're still very much a national contender at this point and ranked number 2, even though they absolutely could be number 1 as I've had them the past few weeks. Ohio State number 3, they beat Michigan State 38-3, so dominant win for them, and they're 10-0 on the season. And in a couple of weeks, here we go again, Michigan and Ohio State. That's going to be a massive matchup as it has been the past couple of seasons. And this one could be the biggest of all of them to this point. Washington's number 4. They beat Utah 35-28. Huge win for them. And the Huskies have shown up in the games that really matter. I mean, you consider the Oregon game, the USC game last week, and then now Utah this past week. Washington has shown up. This team is 10-0, and obviously they were questioned a bit when they had those close games to Arizona State and Stanford. But for the Huskies at this point, I mean, it really is starting to emerge that we're going to see a rematch between Washington and Oregon in the Pac-12 title game, and winner of that more than likely will be in the college football playoffs. Speaking of which, Oregon's number 5. They beat USC 36-27. I do have the Ducks jumping Florida State. I just feel like Oregon has been more impressive this season. They lost to the Huskies, but otherwise, and especially the past few weeks, they've been extremely impressive. They've been dominant, and they've been playing some really good ball right now. So I feel like, and my mindset kind of came down to if Oregon and Florida State played right now, who would win? And I am honestly pretty confident at this point that Oregon would. So I've got them number 5 despite being a one-loss team. Florida State number 6. They beat Miami 27-20. Kind of a close win, but still undefeated. This team is 10-0, and I do have them as number 5, the worst of the Power 5 undefeated teams, but it's very close. Florida State could absolutely be a top 5, top 4 team at this current point. Texas number 7. They beat TCU 29-26, kind of let TCU sneak back into that matchup late, and also just lost their lead running back for the rest of the season, which is obviously a big concern. But for Texas, 9-1 on the season. I feel like the Big 12 at this point, I mean, based on the fact how Oklahoma has just fallen off a bit, a couple of tough losses in recent time. Texas has a loss to Oklahoma. They're still in college football playoff contention, but they got to really finish out the season strong if they want to beat out a team like Washington or Oregon or even Florida State. Number 8's Alabama. They beat Kentucky 49-21. Huge win for the Tide. This is a team that should not be underestimated. We are set for a rematch between Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship game here in a few weeks. Alabama is still in the college football playoff picture, though. I feel like this team is a bit overlooked at this point, but they're only getting better. And Georgia's going to be the favorite, I would assume, in the SEC title game. But Alabama can definitely win that matchup. This is still a Nick Saban coach team that is only getting better. So they're definitely the dark horse in the college football playoff picture at this current point. Definitely still keep an eye on them. Oregon State's number 9. They beat Stanford 62-17. Dominant win for the Beavers, moving up 3 positions into the top 10. I think they're the best 2-loss team in the country at this current point. They've really got a strong offense, and they've taken 2 losses on the season, both of which were by 3 points. So, I mean, if they didn't take those 2 close losses, this team has been pretty dominant. Otherwise, this could definitely be an undefeated team right now in Oregon State. Mizzou's number 10. They beat Tennessee 36-7. Mizzou's a team that is probably your 3rd best team in the SEC. I mean, you got Georgia, you got Alabama, and surprise, you got Missouri. I mean, Mizzou's probably one of your bigger surprise teams of the season. We'll see if they can finish it out strong, but at this point, definitely looks like it. They're only getting better this season, and I know they lost to Georgia last week, but that wasn't even a bad loss to Georgia. They put up a good fight, kept it close, and just beat the brakes off of Tennessee 36-7. Penn State's number 11. They lost to Michigan 15-24, and same story as last season for Penn State. I mean, they were 11-2 last year, losses to Michigan and Ohio State, and now it looks like that's going to be probably the same situation this season as well for the Nittany Lions, losing to Michigan by 9. Disappointing loss for Penn State. That really takes them out of college football playoff contention now and even Big Ten contention. But for Penn State, still got New Year's Six to play for. But at this point, I mean, obviously college football playoff is the goal, and that's just out of the picture at this point, which is definitely disappointing for them. Louisville's number 12. They beat Virginia 31-24 on Friday. I do have Louisville a bit lower than some other polls. I mean, they're 9-1 on the season, so they've got a really good record, but they just haven't been quite as impressive to me. I mean, they lost to Pitt in an ugly game. That's their one loss of the season, but otherwise they've been fairly impressive. But Virginia's a bad football team, and for it to be as close as it was, I feel like if you put Louisville against any team that's in front of them in these rankings, even against LSU or even Oklahoma, I feel like Louisville would maybe struggle a bit. So I've got Louisville at number 12, a bit conservative on them, but I do think that they've got some time still to prove themselves moving forward. LSU's number 13, Oklahoma's 14. LSU is a 3-loss team in the top 15, which is something you don't typically see, especially still in early to mid-November. But they beat Florida 52-35. I mean, I know they've lost 3 games, but this is still a talented team that's played a tough schedule this season. Very much a team that could beat most teams, I'd feel like, in the top 25. And they're still very much a dangerous team in the SEC, even though, I mean, they're pretty much out of contention at this point. They can still beat some pretty good teams. Oklahoma's number 14, beat West Virginia 59-20. Nice bounce-back win for them. West Virginia is a decent team this season, and OU made it look easy. They're 8-2 on the season. 15-21, there's Ole Miss. They lost to Georgia 17-52. I mean, that's a brutal loss for the Rebels at this current point, and that pretty much takes them out of college football playoff contention. I feel like at this point you probably got maybe 7 or 8 main college football playoff contenders. Otherwise, it gets pretty distant, and for Ole Miss to take a loss like that is pretty brutal. And they're still in New Year's Six contention, but really got to play well here the next couple of weeks. Utah's number 16. They lost to Washington 20-35, but I wasn't overly disappointed by Utah. I feel like offensively, they got it done. The second half was terrible offensively, but I mean, they found a way to keep it close and give themselves a chance. So I think Utah should be 16, and Arizona's number 17. Arizona, I've had this team ranked for a few weeks now. They just entered the college football playoff rankings this past week, and they just beat Colorado 34-31. Kind of a scary close game there, but Arizona, the way this team has been playing down the stretch, they're definitely a bit of a surprise team as well, and they're a 3-loss team, but very much one of the more dangerous teams that have emerged in the Pac-12. Probably a true dark horse team of the Pac-12 this season. And I mean, I feel like at this point as well, I mean, the SEC is a solid conference. You got 6 or 7 pretty good teams. In the Pac-12, you probably got maybe 7. I would say 6 or 7. I mean, the SEC and the Pac-12 at this point, I feel like are pretty equal conferences. As far as offense goes, Pac-12 is definitely the best conference in college football, but you can make an argument that Pac-12 is the best conference this season. Notre Dame's number 18. They didn't play this past week, 7-3 on the season. James Madison, number 19. This is the best Group of 5 team in the country, and I don't think it's close at this current point. They beat UConn 44-6, 10-0 on the season. I honestly could put them higher, but I'm still being a bit conservative on them for now. But James Madison, it's just tough that they can't play in a bowl game this season. I feel like they're still going to make it at least to some kind of bowl game because there might not be enough 6-6 teams. But the New Year's Six is obviously out of the picture just with the transition from FCS to FBS, which is unfortunate because James Madison's is definitely the leader for that bid as of right now. But James Madison, still a great season for them. They're in the top 20. Kansas State, number 20. They beat Baylor 59-25, entering the rankings this week. They're 7-3 on the season, and Kansas State is a team that's played pretty well down the stretch. They've taken a couple of disappointing losses, but they're definitely one of the better teams in the Big 12. North Carolina's number 21. They beat Duke 47-45. Huge win for the Tar Heels, 8-2 on the season. Obviously, they've got those 2 really bad losses this season, and against like Georgia Tech and Virginia, I think. So for North Carolina, those two losses, those are against teams that you should be beating easily. So just two of the most confusing losses of the year have been had by North Carolina, but still a good team here. And Drake, man, this offense is really strong, but defensively, they've definitely had some struggles this year. 22-25, Tennessee's number 22. They lost to Mizzou 7-36, moving down 9 positions after that, 7-3 on the season. This ain't the same Tennessee team as last season. They're still good, but it's just not the same. And they still could get to a decent bowl game, but at this point, New Year's 6 is pretty much out of the picture. Iowa's number 23 beat Rutgers 22-0. Iowa's a really interesting team. This team is pretty bad on offense. In fact, they are horrible on offense, but the defense has found a way this season and given this team a chance. And at this point, it looks like they are very much the front runner for the Big Ten West. And I mean, offensively, I just don't know if they can keep up with a team like Michigan or Ohio State, but I mean, their defense can get it done. And they played a decent Rutgers team this past week, and they're 8-2 on the season. And typically an 8-2 Big Ten team would be ranked way higher at this point in the season, but it's just Iowa's offense. I can't rank this team any higher at this current point. Oklahoma State's number 14. They lost to UCF 3-45. That's probably the most confusing. I mean, North Carolina had a couple of really confusing losses, but for Oklahoma State being such a red-hot team at this current point, just beat Oklahoma last week. Huge win, and then they go to UCF and they lose 3-45. I have no idea how that happens. I've got no idea what Oklahoma State is, and so I've got them at 24 this week, kind of towards the back. I still feel like they should be ranked because they've been really successful in recent time, but I mean, man, what a brutal loss for the Cowboys there. Kansas, number 25, they lost to Texas Tech 13-16. Not a bad loss. It was definitely disappointing. You lost by a field goal, which wasn't quite as bad as Oklahoma State. But the Cowboys did beat the Jayhawks earlier in the season, so I got to put them at least in front of Kansas, even though, I mean, Kansas and Oklahoma State both just beat Oklahoma. I mean, you would think just keep them in front of the Sooners, but both teams coming off of disappointing losses, going to bump them both down. Your first 5 out, Tulane's number 26, 9-1 on the season. Tulane's a team that I think is good, but, I mean, they've had so many close games this season to bad teams, and I just don't have much confidence that they can beat a lot of teams in the top 25 right now. Liberty is kind of in the same situation. You could say the same about Toledo. All of these group of 5 teams have decent records, but I just don't think they're very good teams. They're just not very dominant. James Madison has proven that differently the past few weeks, but as for Tulane, Liberty, Toledo, not so much. USC is right outside there at 7-4 on the season. I feel like their offense is still good enough to be in kind of a fringe top 25 team, but their defense is so bad at this point. It's just, you just can't rank them. And then NC State, 7-3 on the season, one of the better teams in the ACC. But with that, let me know your thoughts and comments below on this top 25. We are headed down the stretch. Only 2 weeks remaining in this regular season. Hard to believe, but with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.